In a certain novel, there exists a character named Vanitas Lindworm. He is the cold-blooded son of a marquis, a villainous aristocrat who committed countless atrocities and enslaved others. His story concluded as it began, in darkness, with a lonely and miserable death. And it was as this very character, hated and abandoned by all within a grand estate, that I was reincarnated. Standing before a mirror in a quiet room, I examined my new reflection. So this was the face of Vanitas. I took stock of my new form. The body felt weak, frail even. I couldn't have been more than 15 years old. Taking a drink, I tried to process the flood of information. I still hadn't sorted everything out, but little by little, my memories were becoming clearer. I recalled the moment I first woke up, completely disoriented, not even knowing my own name. A young woman and man were at my bedside, their faces etched with relief as they cried out that Vanitas was finally awake. According to them, I had been unconscious for 3 whole days and nights. People who seemed to be my parents wept with worry, a butler and a maid standing behind them. Back then, I didn't understand any of it. But as my memories continued to return, a staggering realization began to dawn. I understood that in my previous life, I had lived in a completely different world. Nostalgic images burned into my mind. Towering skyscrapers, streets overflowing with people. In that world, I had once read a certain novel. Though I couldn't recall its title, I distinctly remembered seeing Vanitas in its pages. He was the story's antagonist, a villain who enslaved the heroines and forced them to serve him. But in the end, the protagonist inevitably defeated him, freeing the heroines. Vanitas himself was then enslaved, left to die utterly alone. He sat on the edge of his bed, grappling with the disorienting truth. He didn't know why he was here or who he truly was, but one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. His gaze sharpened with grim certainty. If he simply lived as he was now, he was doomed. His hand tightened into a fist, knuckles white. He refused to accept such a fate. With his resolve set, he decided on a course of action. From that moment on, he began to gather information. Surrounded by towering shelves of books, he came to a stark conclusion. The inevitable duel with the protagonist was most likely an unavoidable event in this world's story. He searched for any possible path to victory, and a single thought surfaced: magic. In this world, magic was a force of immense power. Spells could manipulate fire and water, alter the appearance of people and objects, and, through the caster's imagination, make almost anything possible. Yet, according to the novel he remembered, the only magic Vanitas ever used was a basic long-range spell called Light Arrow. However, his memory of the story held another detail. This world contained a long-lost magic, one that was deemed impossible to master. It was a magic only mentioned as part of the world's mythology, so difficult to learn that it had been completely forgotten. Forgotten by everyone, that is, except for him, the one who remembered the story. A jolt of realization shot through him. This was it. He had discovered it. Domination magic. A power that granted the user the ability to manipulate the very magic floating in space, allowing them to control all matter at will. He reached out to grasp this newfound power, but the ethereal energy vanished from his fingertips. It would take time to use it properly, he realized. But with this power, he felt he might finally be able to change his doomed fate. His determination carried him through the night. The next morning, within the grand walls of the Marquis's estate, he began to stir. He sat up with a yawn, blinking in the morning light and wondering if it was already time to rise. His mind drifted back to the previous night, which he had spent poring over magic tomes. He found the people in the house to be kind, and as expected of a Marquis's residence, the collection of books was quite impressive. Just then, a maid entered his room. She wished him a good morning, offering his clothes and a drink. He quietly agreed, telling her to leave them there. As he watched her, he noticed something he'd seen over the past few days. The maids in this house moved with a distinct stiffness, and the reason for it was obvious. As she turned to leave, his hand moved on its own. The maid flinched, stammering his title. He quickly apologized, realizing with a start that his hand had moved unconsciously. The original Vanitas, he recalled, was known to grope the maids and resort to violence. The maid, terrified, begged to be excused and fled the room. He looked down at his hand, understanding that even if his personality had changed, old habits die hard. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, he rose from his seat. He couldn't afford to dwell on that. Today, it was a special day. Now dressed in a formal uniform, his thoughts turned to the future. He knew there were likely 2 key reasons behind the original Vanitas' downfall. The first was losing to the protagonist. The second was losing his 3 enslaved heroines. He understood that even if he managed to defeat the protagonist, it would be meaningless if the heroines simply ran away. The only way to avoid that fate was clear. He had to grow stronger. His fate rested upon 3 individuals. The first, Raphana, a beastkin with rare, lustrous black fur. The second, Hildigard, a cheerful, battle-loving foreign knight. And the third, Christina, a noble lady whose dignity and beauty made her seem anything but a slave. He knew that today marked his first true meeting with them. It was his chance to build a good relationship with the ones who held his destiny in their hands, a chance he truly wanted to take. In his hazy memories from the original story, their smiling faces had always shone with a brilliant light. But the heroines who now stood before his door were a stark contrast to that memory, their expressions somber and empty. They entered his chambers, addressing him as master and asking for his command. He stammered, surprised they had come, but his shock turned to dismay as he saw the utter lifelessness in their eyes. He understood immediately. As slaves who had endured the original Vanitas' cruelty, there was no reason for them to feel anything but hatred. He resolved then and there that this was a reality he had to change. He began by apologizing for the sudden summons, explaining simply that he had just wanted to see them. His attention then focused on one of them. He called for Christina to come closer, and she obeyed with a quiet yes. He remembered a scene from the story where the original Vanitas had complimented her appearance. Believing this detail might be significant, he decided to follow that script, telling her it was good to see her. He then leaned in abruptly, his face mere inches from hers. Startled by the sudden proximity, Christina cried out and shoved him back, forcing him to stumble away. Regaining his composure, he quickly apologized for getting too close. Christina, her face flushed, could only stammer in response. He explained that he simply wanted a closer look at her face. He praised her smooth skin and her strong, clear eyes, concluding that the more he looked, the more beautiful he found her to be. His words left her utterly speechless and flustered. She stammers, face flushed, pleading with her master not to say such strange things. His compliment, she insists, is unfair. Observing her reaction, Vanitas concludes that Christina must despise compliments about her beauty, perhaps because she dislikes his very appearance. He then turns his attention to the next person. Next is Raphana. The girl with rabbit ears flinches, her hands clasped tightly in fear as she answers. Vanitas commands her to come closer, and she lets out a small sound of distress. Of the three enslaved women, it was Raphana who had suffered the worst abuse. Due to her small stature and quiet nature, the original Vanitas had even subjected her to physical violence. As he reaches for her, she cries out and flinches away, expecting a blow. From the side, Christina shouts, demanding to know what he is doing. Vanitas pauses, his hand open, wondering if Raphana truly believes he is about to hurt her. Instead of striking, his gloved hand gently rests on her head, stroking her long ears. Stunned, Raphana can only let out soft sounds of confusion. He tells her that her fur is amazing, so soft he could touch it forever. As he continues, Christina cautiously speaks up, asking him not to be too rough. Vanitas, still focused on Raphana, asks if it would be all right to continue touching her for a little longer. Her tension melts away under his gentle touch. With her eyes closed, Raphana lets out soft, contented sighs, clearly enjoying the unexpected affection. Seeing her positive reaction, Vanitas grows bolder, asking if he can touch her tail as well. The request shocks Christina into stunned silence, while Vanitas notes that Raphana seems fine with his actions so far. The suggestion is too much for Christina. She grabs Raphana, pulling her away protectively and pleading with her master to stop. She demands to know what he wants. Vanitas laments that he simply wanted to touch her more, now worrying that he has only made Raphana even more wary of him. His attention then shifts to the final woman in the room. He realizes that only Hildigard is left, and as she has been watching him intently for some time, her expression thoughtful and serious. She studied him intently, her fingers resting thoughtfully on her chin. Addressing him as master, she offered a perplexing assessment. He was strong, but weak. The contradiction caught Vanitas off guard, and he could only echo her words back as a question. His mind raced to recall what he knew of her. Hildigard was from the Lephite tribe, a clan of warriors who revered strength and shielded the vulnerable. The original Vanitas, lacking in both physical and magical prowess, would have been someone she was meant to protect. Yet, as she looked at him now, he realized she wasn't seeing that weak predecessor. She was instinctively sensing the person he truly was. Her contemplative expression suddenly broke into a radiant, eager smile. With a determined glint in her eyes and a clenched fist, she proposed a fight to settle the matter and find out the truth. The suggestion was unexpected, but Vanitas found himself smiling in return. A clan that values strength, he mused, before accepting her challenge. He turned, his long coat billowing slightly, and formally suggested a mock battle. Across from him, Hildigard stood poised and ready, while the other two heroines watched from safe distance. For Vanitas, this was the perfect chance to test the true extent of his domination magic. Vanitas' Lindworm gathers his companions, assuring them of their safety in this location. He internally considers the nature of the ancient domination magic he possesses, then turns his attention to Hildigard, declaring the start of their mock battle. He knows his opponent is formidable. Hildigard is the daughter of the warriors of the Lephite tribe. He acknowledges to himself that if this were a real fight, he would not walk away unscathed. Still, he views this mock battle as a crucial opportunity. He is determined to test his power and see if his domination magic can be used in an actual battle, his gloved hand beginning to glow with latent energy. Christina immediately voices her concern, calling the endeavor far too dangerous. Vanitas reassures her that it's a necessary opportunity, explaining that he wants to show them all how much he has changed. He then formally reintroduces himself as the new Vanitas Lindworm, a reincarnator, leaving Raphana and Christina stunned. Understanding her master's resolve, Hildigard accepts the challenge, clenching her fists and declaring that she will fight. Vanitas encourages her, telling her not to hold back and to feel free to use magic. Without hesitation, Hildigard unleashes a mud shot, The projectile flies toward Vanitas, causing Raphana and Christina to gasp in shock. As the spell closes in, Vanitas raises his hand, attempting to activate his own power in response. But he is too slow. The mud shot connects squarely with his face. A sudden, direct hit leaves Hildigard, Raphana, and Christina staring in wide-eyed, stunned silence. Christina breaks the silence, exclaiming that this is precisely why she warned him. As Raphana rushes to check on him, Vanitas, lying on the ground, begins to laugh, realizing there was no way to know the outcome without trying. He pushes himself up, reassuring a worried Christina that he's fine and that he expected some injuries. Now aware that Hildigard's magic is mud-based, he turns back to his opponent, ready for the next round. He wipes the mud from his face and declares they will continue the mock battle. Hildigard agrees and, without hesitation, unleashes another mud shot. The spell erupts with force, sending dirt and debris flying as Vanitas braces for impact. From the sidelines, Raphana and Christina watch with concern, calling out his name. The second blast hits, but this time he manages to raise a hand, deflecting the muddy torrent just before it strikes him. The impact is still forceful, causing him to grunt with the effort of holding it back. He lowers his hand, his face now splattered with mud, and manages a strained wink towards his opponent. Hildigard watches him, her expression unreadable. A moment of stillness settles over the training ground. Vanitas stands his ground, now thoroughly coated in dirt, while Hildigard remains poised a short distance away. Watching from the side, Christina remarks with a mix of concern and dismay that her master's lovely face is now completely covered in mud. Catching his breath, Vanitas looks up at Hildigard, a grin spreading across his dirt-streaked face. He asks her if she's enjoying herself. A bright smile blossoms on her face. She affirms that it is indeed fun, noting that while her master is weak, he is stronger than he was before. Breathing heavily, Vanitas informs her that this will be the final exchange, promising to show her his true capabilities. He questions aloud if they're truly going to fight seriously now, then answers his own question with a resolute yeah. Looking directly at Hildigard, he challenges her to come at him with everything she has. The shift in tone does not go unnoticed. Raphana and Christina's expressions fill with apprehension as they watch the confrontation escalate. Accepting his challenge, Hildigard's demeanor turns deadly serious. Addressing her master, she declares that she will now show him her full power as a brilliant, star-like energy begins to coalesce between her hands. She unleashes her full power, launching a massive mud spiral bomb directly at Vanitas. As the churning projectile hurtles towards him, he braces himself, focusing his intent on the domination magic he is about to cast. In response, he thrusts his hand forward, releasing a torrent of crackling, untamed energy. The raw power surges from his palm, colliding with the mud spell in a blinding flash of light. The magical clash resolves in an instant. Vanitas steps forward, having completely deflected the attack, much to the astonishment of Raphana and Christina. Before Hildigard can react, he closes the distance and seizes her wrist. The energy flows from his grasp, instantly enveloping Hildigard's body in crackling, electric-like bonds. She gasps, finding herself forced to her knees and completely immobilized, questioning what this power is. He kneels before her, explaining that this is the limit of his current power. He reveals his method, using domination magic to concentrate the mana in the atmosphere itself. He states confidently that even if she were to give it her all, she would not be able to move. He then softens his tone, reassuring her that there is no need to worry, as the binding will be undone soon. But the strain of the powerful spell proves too much. With a faint gasp, Vanitas' body goes limp, and he collapses backward onto the ground as his companions cry out his name in alarm. As he lies on the ground, Christina rushes to his side, helping him sit up and anxiously asking if he is all right. He manages a weak reply, assuring her he's fine and apologizing to her. Nearby, the still-bound Hildigard looks on with concern. She reflects on the display, acknowledging to herself that her master's power was amazing. However, she also realizes with a sudden clarity that he is somehow different from how he was before. She watched him, a thought crystallizing in her mind. He seemed like an entirely different person. Beside her, Christina looked up at Vanitas with wide, questioning eyes, asking what a reincarnated one could possibly be. He answered not with an explanation, but with a firm declaration. "I am who I am," he stated, his voice ringing with conviction. "Your previous master, the one who oppressed you, is gone." The three women knelt before him, processing his words. Hildigard was the first to speak, asking what he meant by such a statement. He acknowledged their confusion, admitting that it was a difficult thing to accept out of nowhere. His gaze hardened with resolve as he revealed his new purpose. "From now on," he announced, "I'll be fighting against fate. To accomplish this monumental task," he explained, "he would need the strength of all three of them." He then addressed them one by one, his voice firm. Christina, startled by the direct address, she stammered out a "why yes" in response. His attention then shifted. Raphana. She gave a small, hesitant sound of affirmation. Finally, he turned to Hildigard, who met his gaze with a confident smile and a clear yes. He extended a hand towards them, admitting that while there was much they didn't understand, he wanted them to come with him. With his request made, he placed his trust in them completely. "I'll be counting on all three of you from now on." And with that, a new pact was formed. Exhausted but resolute, Vanitas rested against Christina, his eyes closed, while Hildigard and Raphana gathered close, a quiet understanding settling over the group. A man and a woman, Vanitas' parents, stare in disbelief. The woman covers her mouth, barely able to process the question hanging in the air. A reincarnated one? Sitting before them, the boy confirms it. He has taken over. He explains that he has now become Vanitas and, most importantly, that he needs allies. His explanation, though initially met with confusion, eventually convinced them. After the mock battle with the 3 slave girls, Vanitas' parents had no choice but to accept that a reincarnated soul now inhabited their son, allowing him to continue living as Vanitas. A few days later, life at the estate proceeds. He sits at a small table for tea when his father approaches, addressing him by name. Vanitas looks up from his cup to acknowledge him. His father remarks that the maids around the estate have already begun to gossip about his changed demeanor. Vanitas calmly asks if the gossip is favorable. The man explains that Vanitas used to be a storm of foul language and violence. Now, the maids report that he treats them kindly. As Vanitas sips his tea, his father adds a thoughtful observation. Deep down, the original Vanitas must have always been kind of heart, but was likely treated horribly to have acted so differently before. He continues, pinpointing the moment everything changed. It was ever since he lost someone named Noise. The thought concludes with a somber truth. The real reason Vanitas became a villainous noble was because he lost his real brother a long time ago. This revelation catches the new Vanitas completely off guard. He internally questions this, recalling that the novel never mentioned a younger brother. He wonders if it was a hidden backstory he had missed entirely. Before he can dwell on the thought, his father changes the subject, announcing that he has arranged for the magic instructor Vanitas had requested. The boy's expression brightens instantly as he asks if it's really true. He reflected on his recent mock battle with Hildigard. Though he had managed to use the ancient and supposedly impossible domination magic, he knew he was still far too weak to defeat the protagonists and protect the heroines. To achieve his goals, he resolved that he must master this power with the help of a proper magic teacher. As he considered this, his father informed him that the instructor had just arrived at the mansion and asked if he wished to meet them. The father then instructed the maid to bring the instructor to them. Vanitas was taken aback, wondering if this new teacher was someone his father knew from his own student days. The maid returned shortly after, announcing she had brought the guest. Vanitas rose from his seat in anticipation. He wondered what kind of person this instructor could be. If they were an acquaintance from his father's school days, they must be a skilled veteran. He pictured an old, experienced mage, thinking such a person would be ideal for his training. A pair of eyes, startlingly identical to his own, met his gaze. He found himself standing before a person who was his perfect double. The stranger looked at him and simply asked, "Me?" Stunned by the impossible sight, he could only ask, "Who are you?" His father, however, seemed unfazed, calmly addressing the lookalike as Ernst and inviting him to begin. Vanitas stared, bewildered. The person's hair, eyes, and even their build were exactly like his own, yet their presence felt strangely gentle. A brief vision flashed through his mind. A woman with long, flowing hair, wreathed in magical light, as if in the midst of a transformation. The instructor, now revealed in her true form as a woman with a long braid, confirmed his unspoken realization. When he asked if she had transformed into him, she smiled and replied, "Yep, that's right." Before him, the woman with long, light hair offered a warm smile. She introduced herself as Ashley Strayfall, confirming that she had been assigned as his new instructor. He processed her words as Ernst explained that one of Ashley Sensei's innate abilities was transformation. Vanitas recalled reading in the library that such an attribute did, in fact, exist. He hadn't realized, however, that it could be used to change someone's appearance so convincingly. Ernst elaborated, revealing Ashley's title, Phantom Illusions. She explained that Ashley used to be active in the Ministry of Magic, where she led a squad specializing in intelligence and reconnaissance, and that her efforts were instrumental in shaping the peace the Empire now enjoyed. Ashley herself seemed a bit embarrassed by the grand introduction. As he took this in, Ashley's next words caught him completely off guard. She remarked to Ernst that it had been a long time, over 20 years since they had last met. The revelation stunned Vanitas. He voiced his disbelief, asking if they had truly known each other for over 2 decades. Ashley confirmed that they had. His mind immediately jumped to the fact that this world had races different from humans, like the beastkin Raphana. Her confirmation sent his mind racing. If 20 years had passed, then Instructor Ashley must belong to a race with a lifespan far longer than humans, one that spends most of its life in a youthful form. He looked at her directly and asked, "Are you an elf?" She responded with a playful laugh, calling it a secret. All she would reveal was that she was much older than Ernst. Vanitas considered this. A practitioner of transformation magic active during the Imperial Uprising was a woman shrouded in mystery. He found her definitely interesting. His curiosity piqued. He decided to move forward, stating that he'd like to see her magic. Ashley understood and suggested they proceed to the training grounds. As the trio made their way outside, they were spotted from a nearby window. Raphana, flanked by Hildigard and Christina, pointed in surprise and confusion, asking, "Isn't that my master?" Inside a vast, empty hall with a high, arched ceiling and a floor tiled with numerous rectangular platforms, the training is set to begin. Standing opposite Vanitas is a perfect duplicate of himself. The illusion, created by Ashley, speaks first, apologizing for surprising him and acknowledging that seeing an identical version of oneself is indeed strange. She reverts to her true form, explaining that she has heard about him from Ernst. She notes that Vanitas is quite famous for being so unruly that even the Imperial Magic Academy struggled to handle him, and for the atrocities the former Vanitas committed, which were known even in the distant Lindworm domain. With his reputation established, she cuts to the heart of the matter, confirming his desire to learn domination magic, a legendary spell no one has ever mastered. She then presses him, asking what he plans to do once he acquires it, and warning him that there's a chance he'll be hated for it. He turns to face her fully, unsettled by her words. "What do you mean by that?" he asks, seeking clarification for her ominous warning. In response, Ashley explains that her own transformation magic, which allows her to perfectly assume another's identity, causes others to fear and avoid her. She concedes it's natural, as it's a magic that can easily be used for crime. Vanitas internally reflects that this is far beyond his understanding of transformation magic, which he believed only caused minor changes like altering hair color or nose shape. She continues her cautionary tale, stating that while domination magic would be extremely useful for intelligence gathering, the social backlash would be harsh. She warns him that if he starts using it, he may face the same treatment she does. With a serious expression, she asks one final time, "Even so, do you still want to learn magic?" His response is immediate and bright. "Yes," he says with a confident smile. He wants to learn more about magic, believing that with instructor Ashley, he is sure to see a much bigger world. Following his declaration, he claps his gloved hands together, creating a small burst of magical energy. "Right?" he asks rhetorically, adding that he has already realized something. He presents a small, sparkling orb of light he has just created. He tells a surprised Ashley that magic isn't just painful and harsh. It could be something fun, too. He then looks at her directly and asks if, having met him in person, she is disappointed that he isn't the person she heard about. He continued, explaining that if she had spoken with his father, she would know he is the kind of bad kid who wouldn't hesitate to hurt others for his own sake. His self-assessment was immediately rejected. She stated flatly that anyone who had experienced war would understand the truth. His eyes were incredibly clear. She elaborated, seeing no cruelty in him and no genuine desire to harm anyone. Vanitas considered that perhaps he was just masking his selfish desires, but she gently dismissed this, telling him not to pretend to be evil. It was clear, she said with a smile, that it wasn't his true nature. Her expression softened further as she thanked him, admitting that she was starting to have fun as well. Her sentiment echoed his own recent declaration about wanting to see a bigger world, a parallel that left him momentarily flustered. Before he could dwell on it, she announced her next move, a beast transformation into the white snow tigress. Her body erupted in magical energy as she began to change, promising to show him everything she had learned through her experiences. This, she declared, was just a warm-up, leaving Vanitas stunned. He watched as the transformation completed, leaving a massive, saber-toothed tiger looming over him. This, he realized, was the true power of phantom illusions. Before Vanitas stand a massive, saber-toothed tiger. He recognizes this as true transformation magic, realizing that the legendary mage's practical lesson has officially begun. He quickly analyzes the situation. Her form has not just changed. She has transformed into a completely different species, with a distinct ecology. The beast lets out a low, menacing growl, its eyes fixed on him. It then unleashes a deafening roar that reverberates through the Grand Hall. Startled by the sheer force of the sound, Vanitas reacts instinctively, thrusting his arm forward to conjure a defensive wall of jagged ice. The ice erupts violently, forming a crystalline barrier. For a moment, he wonders if he managed to freeze his opponent. His hope is misplaced. He realizes the ground around the instructor had frozen before he was even aware of it. Even from this distance, the suffocating pressure is immense as the tiger emerges from the shattered ice, completely unscathed. The creature stalks forward, its heavy paws thudding against the stone floor. It lets out another low growl, closing the distance with terrifying speed. In a blur of motion, the tiger lunges. Vanitas cries out as sharp claws tear into his arm. He stumbles back, realizing that although he predicted her movement, he was far too slow to dodge. He clutches his bleeding arm, his mind racing. Her movements are faster than even Hildigard's at her most serious. As he contemplates this, the tiger's form dissolves in a shower of magical particles, reverting to instructor Ashley. She stands across from him, the lesson apparently over. "As expected, we should stop here," she says calmly, then gestures toward him. "What's wrong?" He listens as instructor Ashley speaks, acknowledging that while he proposed the practical lesson, it seems too early for him. From across the Grand Hall, he questions her reasoning, insisting that they have only just begun. His expression hardens with resolve as he implores her to continue, stating with conviction that he wants power. He explains his motivation. He has something very precious to him, and to protect it, power is an absolute necessity. The word hangs in the air as Ashley quietly considers his plea. Her face partially obscured, she murmurs his reasoning back to herself, something precious, before simply agreeing. In the distance, his three companions can be seen walking away. She turns her full attention back to him, observing that this seems to be a cause from which he will not back down, no matter what. She then offers a piece of advice, cautioning him that he mustn't neglect himself just because he is desperate. Meanwhile, watching from a safe distance, Raphana points out that there are children waiting for him. Hildigard cheers for her master to do his best, while Christina simply murmurs his name with concern. He understands their sentiments, realizing that they are worried and praying for his safety. This realization solidifies his resolve. His hands tighten his tie as he affirms to himself that their safety is the very reason he must fight. He addresses his instructor by name, his gaze steady. He formally requests that they continue the lesson, pleading with a determined expression. She agrees, her eyes narrowing as she announces the lesson will now begin. A faint magical energy begins to sparkle in her hand as the space around them seems to warp. Sometime later, he relaxes in a large bath, letting out a sigh of contentment. The warm water is a welcome relief. He muses on the fact that the Lindworm family has such a large private bathhouse that can be rented for mixed bathing, thinking it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. He recalls the practical lesson, acknowledging how incredibly tough it was. While he feels he has grown stronger, his body is in a bad state from the ordeal. He concludes that healing his body in this large bathhouse isn't so bad, accepting it as a necessary respite. His quiet moment is suddenly broken by the sound of approaching voices. One calls out, urging someone named Hilda to hurry, while another chides her not to run. He turns, a look of surprise on his face as the doors to the bathhouse burst open. He realizes who has arrived. Hildigard bursts in excitedly, declaring her intention to swim in the wide bath. Christina follows, trying to stop her, while Raphana trails behind them, looking flustered. She felt a bead of sweat as she clutched her chest, never having expected the bathing clothes to be so thin. As she internally fretted, Christina tugged at her arm, excitedly urging her to come swim together. Hildigard pleaded with her to stop pulling. Pulled along towards the large bath. Her eyes widened as she saw Vanitas already soaking in the water. The thought struck her, what if he were to see them like this? The full weight of the realization crashed down on her, her face flushing in an instant of pure, unadulterated shock. Her shock gave way to a stammered cry, barely able to get out his title. Christina, however, remained oblivious, simply calling out Hildigard's name. He looked at them calmly, remarking that the hot water felt quite nice before casually asking if they wanted to bathe together. The invitation left Hildigard utterly speechless. She stammered in response, thinking that going in together was still a bit too fast. Behind her, Christina paid no mind, still cheerfully encouraging her to get in and swim. Deciding to take action, Christina offered a quick apology, claiming it would be dangerous if she didn't keep a close watch on Hildigard. With that, she shoved her forward into the bath. As they splashed into the water, Vanitas mused that he could understand the desire to swim in such a large bath. His thought was cut short by Hildigard's shriek as she, along with Raphana and Christina, realized their wet clothes had become completely see-through. Ignoring Hildigard's panic, Christina began to have fun, splashing water at her. She then turned to Raphana, encouraging her to join in the splashing as well, but Raphana seemed hesitant. Completely mortified, Hildigard tried to cover herself, her face burning with embarrassment. She couldn't believe no one had told her the clothes were see-through, lamenting how such a thing could have happened to her. As the commotion with the girls settled, Vanitas remained in the bath, quietly observing. He found the whole situation rather lively and interesting. A figure emerged before him, his instructor, Ashley. She wore a simple bathing robe and mused aloud, wondering how many years it had been since she'd seen something like this. With a soft sigh, she slipped into the water, announcing that she would sit beside him. Her gaze followed the retreating figures of Hildigard, Christina, and Raphana. She remarked that the three were truly like siblings, and Vanitas agreed, adding that while their backgrounds were different, their circumstances were now the same. He elaborated, suggesting that there must have been times when they had no other choice but to get along. Turning her attention fully to him, Ashley's tone shifted. She asked him directly which of the girls was his number one. The question seemed to catch him off guard. He admitted he'd never considered ranking them before, then stated simply that everyone is important to him. Her expression softened, a hint of vulnerability in her eyes as she touched her cheek. She quietly asked if that everyone could possibly include her as well. He met her gaze and answered without a moment's hesitation, yes, of course. The directness of his reply made her flush, and she splashed the water in embarrassment, exclaiming that he shouldn't be so blunt. Now she didn't know what kind of face to make. Despite her fluster, she managed a small smile. She thanked him, then confessed that she also thinks of him as someone important to her. The intimate atmosphere is shattered by a sudden thud. Hildigard, overwhelmed, collapses onto the tiled floor with a dizzy groan. The sound startles Vanitas and Raphana, who whip their heads around to see what happened, their expressions filled with alarm. Christina quickly assesses the situation, noting that Hildigard seems to have gotten too worked up by the heat. She asks Raphana to help her take care of the fainted girl, and Raphana immediately agrees. As they attend to Hildigard, Vanitas turns to Christina and makes a quiet request. He asks if she would wash his back. Sensing her hesitation, he quickly clarifies that it is not an order and he is not forcing her in any way. A faint blush colors Christina's cheeks as she looks down. After a brief pause, she quietly accepts, stating that she understands. Later, Christina sits behind Vanitas, gently washing his back. The silence hangs between them for a moment before she speaks his title, Master. He prompts her to continue, and she asks if she may ask him just one thing. Leaning in slightly, her voice earnest. She asks him why he puts in so much effort. Vanitas realizes her true motive for agreeing to bathe with him. He confirms she's referring to his practical lesson with instructor Ashley, acknowledging the immense danger he was in. Christina affirms this, confessing that she doesn't understand what he truly wants to achieve. His gaze lowers as he explains the harsh reality of their world. With magic, monsters, bandits, and murderers all rampant, he knows that he could lose his life at any given moment. He clenches his fist, explaining that this is precisely why he wants power, to protect those who are precious to him. Christina looks up from her task, surprised, and asks who he is referring to. Looking directly at her, he answers with startling simplicity, stating that it's her. The directness of his confession catches Christina completely off guard, a deep blush spreading across her face as she stammers in surprise. He then clarifies that, to be specific, it's also Raphana, Hildigard, and even instructor Ashley. He considers all of them to be equally precious to him. Taking her hand, he continues his earnest declaration. In order to protect everyone, he would gladly pay any price and wring out every last ounce of strength from his body for their sake. He explains that the reason he can put in so much effort is simply because he feels he needs to. Christina listens, her expression a mixture of surprise and deep thought. His words hang in the steamy air. Christina's gaze softens with understanding and perhaps a hint of concern as she quietly murmurs his title, Master. But even with all his resolve, a shadow crosses his face. A painful memory seems to surface, an image of the girls looking at him with fear and worry, a reminder of a time his strength was not enough. Noticing the sudden, dark shift in his demeanor, Christina quietly stands and asks to be excused, giving him space. As she departs, Vanitas remains seated alone in the bath, his expression lost and clouded by the mist and his own troubled thoughts. In a grand meeting room, one of the assembled lords addresses Ernst Lindworm with open disdain. He asks what Ernst could possibly want, remarking that unlike him, they're very busy people. A few weeks have passed since Vanitas' revelation about his reincarnation. Now, Ernst has called the nearby lords for this very meeting, his expression steely and resolved. He calmly makes his announcement. He has invited Ashley Strayfall to his territory. The news sends a ripple of shock through the room. Their surprise quickly turns to outrage. One lord cries out Ashley's name, while another identifies her with alarm as the Phantom Illusion, a user of transformation magic. Ernst had anticipated this. He knew that nobles, ever protective of their house's name and honor, are meticulously careful with every word and action. It was therefore easy to predict their poor opinion of someone like Instructor Ashley, who could transform into them at will. Very few held a good impression of her. He had also intended to use their intense reactions to his advantage, planning to call the other heads of households to keep them in check. He watches them, wondering what they believe his true intentions are. The lead lord scoffs, dismissing the entire affair. If the meeting is merely about the Phantom Illusion, he declares, then it is a waste of time, and they will be leaving. As the other lords whisper and conspire amongst themselves, a heavy realization settles upon Ernst. They are looking down on him. His mind races with the bitter truth. The Lindworm family is one of the 7 marquises, the most prestigious of the noble houses. The lords before him are, by rank, subservient. Yet their disrespect is a blatant disregard for the hierarchy. He understands his family's standing has fallen, a consequence of his own timid nature and Vanitas' terrible reputation. If this continues, their power will only erode further, an outcome many of them eagerly await. Interrupting his thoughts, the Lord leans in with a condescending smile. He asks after Ernst's son, inquiring if Vanitas has done something foolish again. Ernst reflects on how, in the past, such a comment would have prompted a flurry of apologies from him, as he always acted to appease these nobles who should be his inferiors. He begins to speak, his jaw tight with resolve, thinking of what he must do now. Cutting off the other lord's mockery, he declares that listening to their prattle is annoying, silencing the room. A sudden shift in his demeanor catches the assembly off guard. One of the lords asks what is wrong. Noting his unusual intensity, he calmly addresses them, acknowledging that he is well aware of their poor impression of people who use transformation magic. His gaze hardens as he issues a direct warning, telling them in advance not to lay a hand on his son's guest. He then adds that he knows some of them have been keeping watch over his territory. He calls their surveillance an eyesore, and while he will let it go for the time being, he demands that it must be stopped immediately. The goateed lord, visibly unsettled, asks what has come over him all of a sudden, remarking that he seems like a completely different person. His words resonate with Ernst. He reflects that if he has indeed changed, it could only be because of someone else's influence. His thoughts drift to a past conversation with Ashley Strayfall and his son, Vanitas. Ashley had explained that the boy was a reincarnator, with a personality completely different from the original Vanny. Ernst had listened, finally understanding what his son called himself. In that memory, Ernst had asked the boy how he planned on living his life from now on. The young Vanitas simply replied that the answer was simple. He declares his intention to live exactly as the original Vanitas did, doing as he pleases. His father, troubled, asks for clarification. Is he referring to the evil that Vanitas had done, or the bad reputation he gained from the violence that stemmed from his grief over losing his little brother? He looks at his parents and tells them straight that, as a reincarnator, none of that has anything to do with him. He continues, stating that he doesn't care if he gets a bad reputation or causes problems later. No matter who tries to stop him, he will get what he wants, asserting that even slaves are his and his alone. He then adds that in order to fight against his fated death, there's a possibility he might take unexpected actions that could involve those around him. His gaze intensifies as he presents them with a stark choice. If they are afraid of releasing another monster into the world, they can kill him right here and now. His mother gasps, covering her mouth in shock. His father asks in disbelief if he is really suggesting they kill someone wearing their son's face. The boy counters that if anyone has the right, it's them, as he was only reincarnated into this body by chance. He then voices a haunting possibility that by taking over the body, he may have been the one who killed the original Vanitas. Seeing their reaction, he quickly clarifies that it is just a possibility. The father remains silent for a long moment, his expression grave. He then asks the boy to answer one more question. In response, the boy sits forward and asks what they will do now. He looked at the boy before him and asked why he was revealing all of this. He wondered aloud if it wouldn't have been better for the boy to simply act like their son. He continued, his voice strained, explaining that if the boy had done so, they would never have known the truth. They wouldn't have had to endure such emotional turmoil. Beside him, his wife wept, lamenting that they would never have needed to accept that their Vanny was truly gone. In response to these grievances, the boy who called himself Vanitas said nothing at all. The father recalled asking if the boy was serious, if he was truly giving them the choice. He observed that while this new Vanitas looked the same as their son, something was different. The boy just stared straight at them, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to do. This was the story the father recounted to a council of lords. He explained that he felt a profound sincerity from the monster wearing our son's skin precisely because of his silence. He concluded his tale by stating his desire to see the boy's future. One of the other lords, however, took offense, calling his remarks rude. Unfazed, the father challenged him, asking if he truly understood the implications of that desire. Despite his bold words, he was compelled to bow his head to the council, apologizing for what he had said and begging their forgiveness. From that day forward, rumors began to spread among the other lords that Ernst had undergone a sudden, strange change. However, the day the world would truly come to know the being called Vanitas was still far in the future. In the present, the young man sits alone on some steps before a grand, ornate building, letting out a weary sigh. He let out a troubled sigh, prompting his instructor, Ashley, to approach and ask what was wrong. He looked up, explaining that he simply felt a desire to enjoy this world a little more. Ashley questioned if her practical lessons were not satisfying enough, but he quickly clarified that wasn't the case, assuring her that the training had been very meaningful. The young man admitted that he'd been so devoted to his training recently that he hadn't been able to give much time to the 3 girls under his care. She agreed, noting that he had indeed been completely devoted to his training for the past few days, and that taking a breather from time to time is a good thing. An idea suddenly struck her. With a decisive gesture, she proposed a solution. Her suggestion was for him to take the girls on an outing into the city. And so, Vanitas found himself leading Hildigard, Raphana, and Christina through the bustling streets. As they walked through a market, Christina marveled at the abundance of food, while Vanitas had to gently admonish Hildigard for trying to touch the wares. Their presence did not go unnoticed. 2 onlookers remarked that it was thanks to instructor Ashley's thoughtfulness that the group was able to leave the mansion for a bit, with one of the girls having been overheard expressing her delight at seeing the fresh, new world outside for the first time. The girls turned to him for direction, asking what he wanted to do. Christina's enthusiastic cry for food settled the matter, and Vanitas decided that their first order of business would be to eat something delicious. As they continued on their way, he suddenly stopped and held his hand out to Hildigard. Confused, she asked why he was doing so while they were just walking around town. He explained simply that it was to hold hands, a lover's handhold. The suggestion left her utterly stunned and blushing. She stares back at him, completely flustered, her voice trembling as she questions if he means the lover's handhold, the kind of intimate gesture reserved only for couples. He calmly confirms her suspicion, asking if she is truly so against the idea. She stammers, unable to find the right words, clarifying that opposed isn't quite. He simply acknowledges her hesitation with an "I see." As a brief image of them together flashes through her mind, Hildigard admits to herself that she just hasn't readied her heart for such a step. Their exchange draws the attention of Raphana and Christina. Raphana excitedly asks about holding hands, while Christina inquires about Hildigard's hesitation. Vanitas observes them, concluding internally that it seems he cannot close the distance between them just yet. His gaze lifts from his companions to the lively city street around them. He reflects internally that this world is indeed an interesting place. As the 4 of them walk together down the street, his thoughts solidify into a quiet resolve. He vows that, as Vanitas, he will defy his predetermined fate of death. Furthermore, he decides that no matter who stand against him, he will do whatever he wishes. His resolve extends to the girls walking with him. He wants to see all of them smiling in the future he intends to build. He accepts that it may take some time, but there is no need to rush. With a renewed sense of purpose, he turns to the others with a bright smile, urging them to go and enjoy themselves. The group moves forward together through the festive street. Unseen by them, a silhouette creeps through the darkness, a mysterious young man observing from afar. In a restaurant, the first destination for the group, Vanitas makes a request of Christina. He asks to be fed by her, clarifying that it is a personal wish, not an order. A flustered Christina complies, holding a spoonful of food to his open mouth. He savors the bite, declaring it delicious, while Christina recoils in embarrassment at the public display. The four of them, Vanitas, Christina, Raphana, and Hildigard, are seated together around a table laden with food. Following a recommendation from instructor Ashley, the group has ventured into Haysomnia, the central city of the Lindworm territory. They are currently enjoying an elegant breakfast in the business district as Vanitas reflects on their situation. He muses on the fact that Christina, who had earlier rejected holding his hand, is now feeding him. The moment is interrupted when Raphana asks him where they're headed next. Vanitas pauses to consider their next move. He decides on their destination, the smith. His decision leads them to the Alkhausen Arms shop, a place Vanitas recognizes as where he had ordered his sword. He notes that the shop appears more worn down than he remembers. As they step inside, a voice welcomes them. A young clerk approaches, apologizing that they don't have much in stock. Vanitas seems to recognize the boy for a moment before dismissing the thought. He introduces himself as Marcus and asks their business. Vanitas explains the smith is absent and that he is looking for a dagger. Surprised to be asked, Marcus agrees to help and presents a valuable-looking dagger, explaining it's the only one of its kind they have. After inspecting the weapon, Vanitas remarks that he was just thinking of acquiring one. He decides to purchase it, handing over a pouch and stating the price is 10 gold coins. He tells the clerk that while it might not be much, he should take it. The clerk, Marcus, stares at the payment in his hands, completely stunned. He thinks to himself that the amount is far too much. As they leave the shop, Christina voices her concern, asking Vanitas if the dagger is truly usable. He looks down at his new weapon and quietly remarks that even someone as feeble as himself can use it. He dismisses Hildigard's concern over his recent purchase. She feels it would have been better to let someone else choose for him. But Vanitas insists it's fine, merely something he acquired on a whim. Having settled the matter, he changes the subject, announcing that their next destination is a slave merchant. The stark declaration hangs in the air, leaving Raphana, Hildigard, and Christina utterly stunned and speechless as he asks if they understand. They arrive in a district with an atmosphere completely different from the business sector. As Vanitas takes in the weathered surroundings, a woman's voice calls out, greeting young Master Vani. The voice belongs to a tall, confident woman whom Vanitas recognizes as Shuka. She remarks that it's been a while, specifically since she sold him, the former noble lady, Christina. At the mention of her past, Christina flinches, her body tensing in shock. Shuka continues her recollection, explaining how the daughter of a fallen noble family became a slave to help them, and how it was young Master Vani who took a liking to her. Her gaze sweeps over his three companions, whom she pointedly calls his favorite slaves. With a businesslike tone, she then asks what he wants today. She smirks, gesturing towards other shackled women in the establishment. She pointedly asks if he has grown tired of his current companions and is looking for replacements. He calmly refutes her assumption, stating he did not come to buy a slave. He then makes a request. From now on, she is to refer to him simply as Vanitas. She seems momentarily surprised, then smirks, musing that he must be at the age where he wants to act like an adult. Agreeing to his terms, she formally asks, young Master Vanitas, to what do I owe the pleasure? He then turns his attention to Christina, commanding her to stand before him. Her eyes widen in shock, a wave of confusion washing over her. Clenching her gloved fist, she addresses him as Master and asks with a trembling voice if he intends to abandon them. He calmly reassures her that he does not. Extending a hand toward her, he reveals his true purpose for being there. He wants to change their slave contract, specifically to remove and replace hers. The declaration hangs in the air, leaving Christina to wonder what this unexpected change could possibly mean. Inside a well-appointed room, Vanitas addresses a woman in a simple dress, stating his intention to change his slave contract with Christina. The woman, holding a small, ornate key, regards him coolly, silently questioning the young master's motives. He then turns to Christina, beckoning her closer. He begins to explain that slave collars come in different variations, each possessing a different grade. He asks if she was aware of this fact, and she looks back at him, a hint of confusion in her eyes. The difference he spoke of was clear. While the collars worn by Hildigard and Raphana were a plain black, Christina's was unique, shining with a deep crimson hue. The woman confirms this, stating that if one were to grade Christina's collar, it would undoubtedly be of the highest quality. She continues, revealing that she was the one who originally bought Chris. She muses on the strangeness of the situation, wondering who would ever think a young lady from a fallen noble family would willingly sell herself into slavery to provide for her family. The woman explains that Christina's beautiful appearance, coupled with her status as a fallen noble, gave her high value as a slave. However, she admits that despite this, she had difficulties finding a suitable buyer. As Christina listens with a downcast expression, the woman's voice continues, noting that a high-quality slave like her should have been sold immediately. Vanitas then reveals the reason. The woman had created a specific condition that deterred buyers. He explains that the crimson collar is of the highest quality, capable of accepting a different kind of contract, one that can even bind a master. As she hears this, Christina's hand goes to her chest, her eyes fixed on the collar around her neck. He looks at her directly, clarifying the exact nature of the condition. To protect her from being sexually abused, the collar allows her to refuse any commands of that nature. Christina looks up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. His expression hardens as he declares that they are there today to change that very contract. He intends to find out if she is truly willing to become his slave in the truest sense of the word. Christina's eyes widened in shock, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple. He turned to the slave trader, calmly explaining the procedure. To alter the contract, he stated, consent from both parties was required, as was the specific contract attribute magic that slave merchants possess. He elaborated for the entire group, making it clear that without the agreement of all three of them, himself, Christina, and the slave trader, the contract could not be changed. He then detailed the magical mechanics of the bond. The slave collar, he explained, uses the master's credentials by registering both their blood and magical power. This was the only way for the contract to be successfully established. With the explanation complete, he put the question to her directly. What will you do, Christina? She looked down, her expression conflicted, before meeting his gaze and beginning to speak. She believed, she said, that he had changed. She elaborated on her reasoning, recounting how he had stopped his verbal abuse and violence. He now devoted himself to their training, she explained, and treated all of them with far more consideration. She conceded that some servants in the mansion remained fearful of him, but expressed her belief that their opinions would change once they saw him as he was now. He listened to her assessment in silence, his expression unreadable. Her tone then hardened. Despite her observations, she declared that she did not trust him yet. She knew of many who had suffered under his abuse of authority, tormented by his unreasonable orders, both physically and mentally. She continued, her voice filled with conviction. Even if he claimed to be a reincarnated person, she could not forget the past. She still remembered the days when he looked down upon her with that very same face and voice. He listened as she confessed her inner conflict. With a pained expression, Christina admitted that she truly wanted to believe in him, but something held her back. He processed her words calmly. So that's your answer, he concluded, recognizing that she was still unable to entrust her entire being to him. At his summation, Christina flinched, squeezing her eyes shut. His reaction, however, was not one of disappointment. He simply stated that he had expected as much, which caused Christina to look up in surprise. He elaborated, explaining that he knew she didn't fully trust him yet, and that the shadow of his former self had not been completely erased from her mind. Despite this admission, he reaffirmed his position. Modifying the contract was still an absolute necessity. He then made a confession of his own. He acknowledged that while he had changed, he was no saint, and that his own feelings toward her were not entirely pure. He paused, his gaze unwavering as he prepared to make his true intentions clear. But even then, he declared, his voice resonating with conviction, I still want your everything, Christina. Taking her hand gently, he looked her directly in the eyes. He was serious about this, he assured her, and he was planning to earn her trust completely. He then explained the significance of their surroundings. He had chosen to make this declaration here for a specific reason. It was the very place where she and his former self first met, and where they were bound together as master and slave. The memory of that day surfaced, his past self coldly ordering a terrified young Christina to become his slave. He acknowledged the truth of their current dynamic, stating that their relationship was one of master and slave, where one side unilaterally exploits the other. That, he admitted, was how it had always been. He looked directly at Christina, his resolve clear. He proposed they restart from the very beginning, vowing to become a master worthy of her and to never let anyone take her away from him. Her eyes widened slightly, a blush creeping across her cheeks as she softly uttered his title, Master. Just then, Hildigard stepped forward, gripping his arm. She questioned if his promise was only for Christina or if it included her and Raphana too. With a confident smile, he assured her it did, admitting he was a greedy person. From her position, Raphana made her own declaration, vowing that she would never let the three of them escape from her, and that they had best remember it. Christina, her expression softening into a warm smile, quietly agreed. He noted the warmth of her hands, then mused that her rapidly beating heart was likely just playing tricks on her. He then offered her a chance to confirm his theory. Before she could react, he pulled her into an embrace, pressing her hand against his chest. As she flushed in surprise, he asked her to feel for herself, questioning if his heart wasn't perfectly calm. Their moment was cut short by an unimpressed voice. The slave trader, observing the group, demanded to know why they had even come to her establishment. She took a slow drag from her cigarette holder, her expression one of pure annoyance. She couldn't believe they had come all this way just to flirt, and curtly told them to take their lover's quarrel somewhere else. Christina, completely flustered, stammered a denial, insisting they weren't doing anything so indecent. Vanitas, however, simply apologized, admitting that he had a specific reason for wanting to be there. The woman sighed, exasperated. After a moment of observation, she conceded that the rumors appear to be true. Vanitas' lindworm had indeed changed. Inside the shop, Raphana turns to a hesitant Christina, asking directly what she intends to do about their master's proposal and whether she will accept it. Before she can answer, Vanitas steps forward, addressing Christina by name. He assures her that they can change the terms of the contract whenever she feels ready. She looks toward him, asking if he is truly okay with such a flexible arrangement. With his eyes closed, he gives a simple, firm confirmation. Her cheeks flush as she murmurs his title. He explains that until she makes her decision, all she has to do is watch him from behind and determine for herself if he is worthy of becoming her master. Having settled the matter, he turns to the proprietor, Shuka, informing her that he'll be counting on her to mediate the contract between him and Christina when the time comes. She agrees nonchalantly, confirming that she will also be sure to get paid for her services. With their business concluded, she dismissively tells them to go home. Heeding her words, Vanitas announces to his companions that since his business is settled, they should walk around the shopping district before returning. Raphana cheers at the idea of playing, while Hildigard quietly affirms her agreement. As they proceed, he suddenly stops, noticing Hildigard has fallen behind, her expression distant and troubled. He calls out in concern, asking what she is doing. His attention is then diverted by a threatening sound from a nearby alley. Peeking around the corner, he sees several figures looming over someone on the ground. The scene reveals a young boy cornered by 3 hooded thugs. They taunt him, demanding a fee to pass and warning him to give up quietly, boasting about how scary they can be. The boy's eyes are squeezed shut in terror as he desperately pleads for someone, anyone, to save him. In response to his plea, Vanitas steps forward, placing himself between the boy and the aggressors. He calmly remarks that in these situations, it's usually a cute girl who finds herself surrounded. Behind him, Raphana looks on in disbelief, her mind reeling at the sight of the so-called villainous noble intervening to save someone from what she identifies as bad people. As Vanitas and his companions emerge onto the street, their path is blocked by 3 hooded figures. The central figure declares that they are being apprehended, his tone leaving no room for argument. He holds up a hand, telling them to wait. His gaze settles on one of the figures, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he mentally catalogs the features. White hair, jet black eyes, and clothes that look far too expensive for a common thug. Upon hearing his voice and seeing him clearly, the thugs react with shock. The leader's eyes widen as he realizes this is no ordinary boy, but the son of the Lord himself. Another gasps, understanding that they are facing a noble. His expression hardens. He informs them that they are threatening citizens of the Lindworm domain right in front of him, and warns them not to think they can simply walk away. Enraged, one of the thugs draws a dagger and lunges, shouting for his companion to attack. But before the blade can find its mark, Vanitas calmly utters a single word, grasp, and a small shockwave of force erupts from his position. The invisible force slams into the charging man, sending him flying backward with a grunt of pain. He crashes against a stone wall, slumping to the ground. His companions stare in disbelief, one of them stammering, "What? What did you just do?" He watches the scene unfold with a detached air, thinking to himself that the attack was pathetically weak. Seeing his comrade fall, another thug charges forward in a rage, demanding to know what was done. Behind Vanitas, Raphana and Hildigard cry out his name in alarm. With fluid grace, he draws a short sword from the scabbard at his side, the polished steel glinting in the light. He effortlessly parries the thug's dagger, the force of the block sending the lesser blade flying from the attacker's grasp. The remaining hooded figure expresses disbelief that Vanitas is also skilled with a weapon, while Raphana recognizes the blade as the short sword they had just purchased from the weapon shop. He feels the point of a blade press against his back. The remaining thug snarls that while he has no interest in killing a brat, he will make an exception and end him right there. In response to the threat, one of the hooded figures lunges forward, his weapon igniting into a fiery slash. Unfazed, Vanitas raises his hand, preparing to cast his own spell. He unleashes a powerful concussive force, a spell he calls Grasp Pressure, which erupts outwards and slams into his assailant. The thug's eye widens in disbelief as the invisible force overwhelms him. Moments later, both remaining thugs are on the ground, immobilized by the lingering effects of his magic. Vanitas looms over them, demanding to know if they were the ones harassing the young man. One of them, trembling, confirms it. With the threat neutralized, he turns to the boy he had been protecting. He advises him to be careful on his way home, as he has shopping to do. The boy, looking relieved, thanks him sincerely. As the boy departs, Hildigard rushes to his side, her expression filled with concern. She asks if he is all right, but he calmly tells her not to worry, as it's no problem. He then instructs her to call the guards and hand over their subdued attackers. Hildigard acknowledges the order immediately. His attention then shifts to the hilt of his new sword. She notices his gaze fixed on the weapon and begins to ask about it. He simply affirms her unasked question with a quiet yes. Later, standing in a vast, opulent hall, he looks down at his hand, murmuring that this has happened sooner than he anticipated. Hildigard, standing nearby, looks at him with a puzzled expression, unaware of his meaning. He had expected their arrival. Before him knelt 2 men, a blacksmith named Dirk and his son, Marcus. The older man expressed his gratitude for being granted an audience, but Vanitas simply observed them with a cool, calculating gaze. His companions, Hildigard and Christina, stood by as he addressed the kneeling pair. While he already surmised their purpose, he demanded they state the reason for their petition themselves. In response, Dirk began to explain. He spoke of the dagger Marcus had previously given them, admitting that his son had forged it and that its craftsmanship was exceptionally crude. Hearing this, Vanitas declared that their payment would be refunded. He then turned slightly, asking if they would not take the flawed weapon back. He decided it would be quicker to show them. He instructed Christina to present the item, and she immediately affirmed, "Yes, my lord." She placed a cloth-wrapped bundle on the table before them. Unveiled, it revealed the dagger, now snapped in 2. Dirk stared in disbelief as Vanitas explained coolly that it had broken during a minor skirmish. He continued, recounting how he had approached Marcus, seeking a new weapon suited for him, and that this was the dagger he had ultimately bought. The full story sent Dirk into a rage. Roaring his son's name, he slammed his fist down with tremendous force, shattering the wooden table beneath the broken blade. His fury turned on his son. Grabbing Marcus by the hair, he forced his head down, admonishing him for his failure as a blacksmith, for knowingly selling a flawed, cracked weapon to a client. The blacksmith's anger subsided into desperation. Bowing deeply before Vanitas, he apologized for his son's transgression. He pleaded for his son's life to be spared, regardless of whether his apology was accepted, his hand trembling as he held a blade forward. He watched as the blacksmith, Dirk, continued his desperate plea, offering his own life to quell the commotion and begging for the matter to be settled with his death alone. Unmoved, Vanitas issued a calm command to his subordinate. He ordered Christina to knock the knife from Dirk's hand. She acknowledged immediately. In a flash of movement, she complied, her blade striking the blacksmith's hand and sending his weapon flying. Dirk and Marcus could only stare, stunned into silence by her speed, as Dirk wondered why. Vanitas then addressed the disarmed man, stating he had no intention of holding him responsible for the disturbance. Instead, he instructed Dirk to simply watch what was to come. His attention shifted from the father to the son. Turning to the kneeling boy, Vanitas announced it was now Marcus's turn to be questioned. He loomed over the youth, demanding an explanation for why he had done such a thing. Marcus remained silent, his head bowed. Marcus finally spoke, recounting how a year prior he had asked his father to craft a jeweled sword. His father, a man who only made practical weapons for adventurers, had refused, telling him to request a useless but showy weapon instead. He continued, explaining that this refusal felt like a rejection of his own beliefs. The delicate sensibilities of a blacksmith's son began to feel strange to him. The young man's confidence in his father's creations waned. Seeing his father's dejected posture, he felt his own spirit being crushed. And so, he gave Vanitas the flawed dagger he'd acquired, hoping that if Vanitas were even slightly injured by it, his feelings would be validated. He concluded his confession defiantly. "My father has nothing to do with this," he declared, looking up at Vanitas. "If you're going to kill someone, kill me." Dirk could only cry out his son's name in horror. Christina Martia, standing beside Vanitas, asks what he intends to do. With his eyes closed, he quietly affirms the situation. His thoughts drift to a past conversation where he asked Marcus if he liked being a blacksmith. Marcus had replied that of course he did, having grown up watching his father work at the forge. Returning to the present, Vanitas addresses the blacksmith Dirk directly. He asks if Dirk truly intended to let his son take responsibility and simply close the shop. He quickly clarifies that if he were to say something harsh, it would be a punishment directed at Marcus, not his father. Marcus looks up, confused, questioning if the punishment is for him. Vanitas then informs Dirk that he will have him make equipment for his knights. He asks the blacksmith if he prefers making practical weaponry, leaving Dirk stammering in surprise. He explains that since he is taking up residence in the territory, he needs people to take care of things for him, adding that he will even bring his wife along. The blacksmith processes the offer. Becoming the exclusive smith for the knights would allow him to focus entirely on his craft as much as he likes. To him, it sounds like a dream. Dirk declares that he will give the shop to his son, as such a smithy is no longer needed. He bows deeply, pledging his service to Vanitas, but asks one final question. What will be the punishment for Marcus? Vanitas turns to Marcus, revealing that he deliberately accepted the flawed weapon, knowing it would break. Marcus is stunned, asking why he would do such a thing. He explains that he wanted a skilled blacksmith to work exclusively for him and stage the entire incident. Since it wasn't an official matter, no record will remain. He then offers Marcus a position as his personal attendant to make amends. Marcus is left utterly speechless. He remains kneeling, asking if Vanitas truly intends to offer no punishment. Vanitas' voice cuts in, clarifying that the punishment is not meant for Marcus. Instead, the young lord turns his attention to Dirk, issuing a command. For his sake, Dirk is to forge weapons that surpass even his own father's creations. Both father and son stare up at him, stunned. Overwhelmed, Dirk can only stammer that he is still an inexperienced blacksmith. Vanitas dismisses this, revealing that he built the silver forge by himself, without relying on his parents' power, for the sole purpose of having Dirk craft his armaments. This revelation only deepens Dirk's confusion. He points out that his failures are far more frequent than his successes and questions why Vanitas would entrust such a task to him. In response, Vanitas extends a hand, offering a unique form of penance. He explains that failures in the forge must be redeemed at the forge. This, he declares, is Dirk's punishment, to become a great blacksmith, one capable of satisfying Vanitas' demands. The blacksmith looks up, his eyes wide with a dawning understanding. Vanitas presses the point, asking if Dirk is ready to face his own sin. He declares that they are now two sinners who have laid bare their shame to each other. Vanitas instructs him to remember this feeling every single time he swings his hammer. As father and son depart, Christina approaches Vanitas, questioning his decision not to punish Marcus. Vanitas simply replies that it would be a waste. He closes his eyes, a subtle smile playing on his lips, and declares that every action he takes is for the purpose of achieving the villainous noble's goal. In the quiet of the night, a soft knock echoes on a bedroom door. Inside, Vanitas sits waiting. Raphana stands hesitantly in the hallway, announcing her presence to her master before letting herself in. He has moved to sit on the edge of his bed, and he apologizes for summoning her so late. Gesturing to the space beside him, he invites her to sit. With a quiet affirmation, she nervously takes a seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Without warning, he lies down, resting his head in her lap. Startled, she flinches. He notes her distance but dismisses it, saying it's fine. She looks down at him, flustered, and simply tells him to sleep. He sits up abruptly, questioning her reserved behavior. He explains that he only called for her so she could sleep beside him. His tone shifts to one of light mockery as he asks if she truly thought he would try something with the child. Calling it a joke, he instructs her to turn off the lights and wishes her good night, addressing her by name, Raphana. She quietly agrees, wishing her master a good night in return. Moments later, they lie side by side in the bed, turned away from each other. But Vanitas is not asleep. His eyes are wide open, staring into the darkness. He turns toward the tense girl beside him. It's about time, he thinks to himself, as his hand slowly reaches for her throat. His fingers tighten around her neck, choking her. A strangled gasp escapes her lips as shock and pain register on her face. She gasps for air as the pressure on her throat vanishes. Vanitas sits up in bed, looking down at her with a calm expression, and asks if she is in pain. Falling to the floor, she clutches her neck, coughing. With tears in her eyes, she looks up at him and asks what it felt like to receive the curse to kill her. He remains seated on the bed as she demands to know why he stopped his attack midway. He replies simply that he will forgive her, but only if she answers his questions first. His thoughts drift to his earlier conviction. He had been certain that if she came to his room, he would inevitably harm her. Now sitting on the floor across from her, he tells her to speak if she has something to say, adding that the night is still long. She stares back, incredulous. She questions why he wants to listen now, reminding him of how much she cried and how he never stopped hurting her. He calmly agrees with her. He acknowledges that his past self had trampled on her and relentlessly caused her pain. He continues his admission, stating that he did so no matter how much she suffered or begged him to stop. Her eyes widen in utter shock at this confession. She asks if he is a different person, or perhaps even reincarnated. She cries out that Christina and Hildigard are also being deceived. Still kneeling, she declares that what he has done can never be forgiven. Then a realization dawns on her. He has been thinking about all of it, everything, this entire time. She reflects on her companions. Hildigard and Christina serve the same master, but their backgrounds, ages, and experiences are all different. Despite this, they are bound together, fighting as one for their lord with an admirable strength that she acknowledges. She was able to endure because she had them, her sisters, by her side. The name, Hildigard, echoes in her thoughts, a testament to their bond. Her gaze shifts to the present, watching Hildigard interact with Vanitas. She looks truly happy. She then sees Christina, who also seems pleased in his company. Raphana silently questions why. The sight fills her with distress. She recalls Hildigard in the mock battle and Christina laughing at the slave trader's shop. How could they both be so easily deceived? The word reincarnation is something she can't even bring herself to say. She has not forgotten those painful days. She remembers watching her master sleep, thinking that even her weak grip would be enough to break his neck. And so, she had acted upon that impulse, her hands closing around his throat. He, however, remembers it differently. He recalls telling her his body had changed, but now wonders why he never sensed her murderous intent. Was it because her hands were surprisingly gentle, or because he felt a pleasant warmth from them? Even as she tightened her grip, determined to kill him, that warmth was all he perceived. His thoughts return to the present. He looks at the dejected Raphana sitting on the bed and asks, "Is that everything, Raphana?" His words cause tears to stream down her face. "Don't cry. Come here," he says softly, reaching out and pulling her towards him, much to her surprise. She is gently pushed down onto the bed by Vanitas, who tells her to lie there. Startled, she protests, telling him to stop and exclaiming that she isn't as simple as Christina. As she lies there, his hand gently strokes her hair, causing her to let out a small, surprised gasp. He continues the gentle motion, explaining that he is simply patting her head. Flustered, she weakly tells him to stop. She pushes herself up, turning her back to him as she sits on the edge of the bed. Her voice is low as she asks why he isn't trying to get away from her. She continues, her gaze fixed on the floor. She states that he knows she has been pursuing him, and questions if he has noticed how the people around him have changed, becoming kinder. She dismisses the idea, declaring that she refuses to believe such a convenient story about him suddenly changing for the better. From his seat on the bed, Vanitas calmly agrees with her assessment. He then elaborates, suggesting that the people around her simply wanted to believe in him. He looks at her intently and adds that she must have hated that, a statement that catches her completely off guard. He asks what's wrong, noticing her stunned silence. Her mind flashes to Hildigard and Christina, her only allies, and the memory of him attacking them surfaces. As she grapples with this, Vanitas poses a question. Why does she think he is showing her his defenseless side now? He answers his own question, stating plainly that it is to provoke her. He explains that she keeps her emotions bottled up too much and encourages her to be more selfish. He continues, his tone firm, telling her that it's all right to direct all of her feelings at him. Her sadness, her regret, her joy. He wants her to hold nothing back. His words hung in the air, and Raphana, her expression uncertain, questioned if such a thing was truly permissible. He met her gaze with unwavering resolve, declaring himself her master. He explained that he would be unworthy of the title if he couldn't accept every part of her, especially her burdens as a slave. He continued, insisting that she, Raphana, had value and that he wanted to know all of her feelings, asking her to reveal them only to him. Overwhelmed, she could only whisper his title, Master. Seeing her kneeling on the floor, seemingly composed at last, he noted that she had finally settled down. With a quiet resolve, he then announced it was time for her punishment for attempting to strangle him. Her eyes widened in disbelief at his words. The punishment he decreed was for her to hold him as they slept that night. Her voice carried, stammering in protest. He calmly questioned why she was trying to strangle him again, reasoning that it would be acceptable for just one night. After a moment's hesitation, she finally, reluctantly, agreed. Following his command, she held him in her arms as they lay in bed. She sought his confirmation, asking if this was all right, and he simply hummed in response. She then admitted that she couldn't sleep, blaming him entirely for her restlessness. She made one final demand, that he not fall asleep before she did. Despite her words, her breathing soon evened out as she drifted into a peaceful sleep. He watched her, softly murmuring her name. He watched her sleep, a gentle expression on his face. He reflected internally that despite his selfish demands, his wish had been granted so easily. He couldn't help but notice how comfortable and peaceful she looked in her slumber. He softly wishes Raphana a good night and sweet dreams, watching over her as she sleeps peacefully, surrounded by a gentle, dreamlike aura. The next morning, a maid calls out for Raphana, searching the halls for her. Her search leads her to Christina, who stands alone in the corridor. The maid approaches, asking what the matter is, as Christina hesitates to speak. Looking directly at the maid, Christina explains that last night, Raphana was summoned to the master's bedroom. She then pointedly asks the maid how the experience was. The maid is stunned into silence by the implication. Christina continues, admitting that she has no experience with such matters and had come to ask for some reference. Completely flustered, the maid thinks to herself that Christina was never this clumsy or tactless before. The weight of some unspoken responsibility seems to dawn on her. Elsewhere, Vanitas listens in on the conversation, a smug grin spreading across his face. He finds this whole misunderstanding unexpectedly interesting. Inside a lavish room, the slave trader Shuka sits with her arms crossed, remarking her surprise at being brought to such a mansion. Vanitas greets her, noting that her attire suits her better than he expected. He reflects internally that he never imagined being summoned to her residence. With slave traders, opportunities were always available, so he questions if now is the time to be tense. Shuka explains that Vanitas' father never introduced her to his more shadowy business associates. Although she was asked to look after Vanitas, she chose this land as her base of operations because it would be a waste not to capitalize on it. A memory of his father, Ernst Lindworm, surfaces. Ernst declares his intention to make effective use of the slave traders from now on. He clarifies that while he won't reevaluate his relationship with his son, he's closely watching for any changes in the relationship between Vanitas and the three heroines. Returning to the present, Vanitas realizes that under the old one-sided contract, there would have been no room to negotiate with the slave traders. He understands that forming a relationship of trust with them now, as he is seen doing with Raphana, Hildigard, and Christina, is crucial. Recently, he has been integrating the slave traders into the management of his territory and even incorporating them into the knighthood, earning their trust as allies, a development observed by the blacksmith. He concludes that if he can win their favor, they will become a vital force for the development and protection of the Lindworm domain. His thoughts are interrupted as Shuka continues, recalling how his father also told her it was pathetic to bow her head to a mere slave trader. She remarks that he used to be underestimated for his weakness, but now he's like a completely different person. Vanitas, however, has no idea who she's talking about. He clarified to Shuka that he was not the one who decided policy for the Lindworm territory, that authority belonged to his father. She turned her head slightly, dismissing his claim and telling him not to lie. He changed the subject, asking if she had brought what he requested, confident that she had prepared it properly. Confirming that she had, Shuka opened a small case she had with her. Inside, nestled amongst white roses, were 2 top-quality collars. Vanitas, now in a room with Raphana, Hildigard, and an animal-eared maid, approved of them, noting their fine crimson color was the same as Christina's. He then asked if the other girls understood the implication. Before anyone could respond, Christina stepped forward, demanding they wait. She questioned Vanitas directly, confirming her suspicion that the 2 collars were intended for Hildigard and Raphana. He turned to face her, calmly affirming that she was correct. Christina was incredulous, asking why she was even present. She declared that if this concerned Hildigard and Raphana, she wanted to be involved as well, adding that Shuka's persistent gaze was unsettling her. She then looked directly at Vanitas and announced that she was thinking of changing the terms of her basic contract. Her unexpected declaration left him utterly stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. He calmly explains that his reason for coming with Shuka was for no other purpose than to change the basic contract, the one that allows them to refuse sexual commands. The 4 women present, Christina, Hildigard, Raphana, and the maid, react with collective shock and disbelief. Christina clutches her chest, flustered, exclaiming, "Oh, master, She asks if he wasn't prepared for this, declaring that she is not such an easy woman. Vanitas, however, seems to have anticipated this reaction. Unmoved, Christina insists that she is not easy. He looks up at her, his expression earnest, and asks if she truly dislikes the idea. His direct question catches her off guard, and she can only respond with a flustered, stammering sound, her face flushing a deep red. He tells her to stop making that face, admitting that it makes it difficult for him to refuse her. He wonders aloud if she is the one who desires him so much, turning her own proposition back on her. She continues to squirm, completely overwhelmed. Watching from the side, the animal-eared maid silently observes that her chrisne is quite easy to read. The focus shifts to Hildigard and Raphana, who have been watching the entire exchange with wide, silent eyes. Vanitas notes from off-panel that they have been listening in. He turns his attention to them, explaining that he wishes to exchange their collars. He clarifies that a change in the collar's color will not alter the fundamental nature of their relationship. He continues, assuring them that just as with Christina, he has no intention of forcing them into anything. He wants to bestow the new collars upon them as a symbol of this promise. Standing before them, Vanitas makes a startling proposal. He will release them from their slavery once. Then, with open arms, he asks if they will willingly become his slaves a second time. Hildigard's expression hardens with determination as she processes his words. She quietly repeats the core of his offer back to herself. Become a slave. Once more. He looked at Hildigard, seeking confirmation after her determined declaration. Hildigard, are you sure? He asked softly. She acknowledged that their master had changed, and that it felt lonely at times. However, she confessed that being with him was also enjoyable. Her thoughts turned to his grand ambition, to stand at the pinnacle of the magic world using forbidden arts. She had always wanted to be by his side, to grow stronger with him. Clasping her hands to her chest, she concluded that none of that mattered. He was her master, and she was his. He smiled gently and reached out a hand, telling her that he wanted to be with her too. He promised that even if they fell into hell or were trapped somewhere, he would always be with her. She agreed without hesitation, vowing to be with her master forever. Their hands clasped, sealing the new pact. He declared that together, they could become even stronger. Beaming, Hildigard accepted, placing herself in his care once more. With Hildigard's decision settled, he turned to the other maid. What about you, Raphana? He asked. Will you become my slave once more? Raphana looked down, her expression clouded with distress as she struggled to find her words. She began, her voice faltering. Her head bowed low in apology. I'm sorry, master, she whispered. Lifting her gaze to meet his, she delivered her decision. I don't have the resolve to become your slave a second time. Her refusal left Vanitas momentarily stunned. He lets out a soft sigh, then gently pats the animal-eared maid's head. He asks her if she really thought he would be angry. He continues, explaining that if she is still waiting, he is actually pleased that she is showing her own will. What he wants to hear now, he clarifies, are the words that come directly from her heart. She looks up at him, her voice hesitant as she addresses him as master. She asks him to remember something important. He crosses his arms, reminding her that he was the one who told her to do as she pleased. But then his expression shifts, and he leans closer to confess that his true intention was never to let her go. He states plainly that he wants her, leaving her stunned and flustered. Stepping back to address the room, he acknowledges that it seems cruel to be freed from slavery only to be enslaved once more. He insists, however, that it is necessary. He explains that the crimson collar is more than a restraint. It is the chain that binds them together, the proof of their connection. Clenching his fist, he declares that because of this bond, he cannot forgive the crude way she has been treated. Tears welling in her eyes, she quietly agrees. Vanitas tells her he will await her decision, then turns his attention elsewhere in the room. His gaze falls upon Christina Martia. He calls her by name and asks for her response, leaving her to face the sudden weight of his question.